What is going on, YouTube? Welcome back to Fireside Rangers. I'm your host, Eric Wilson. Today, doing a little solo episode, a deep dive into Mika Zibanejad and the little bit of an offensive tear that he's been going on throughout the most recent games played by the New York Rangers. We know Mika was one of those players who started the season off a little bit slower, as he always does, but he has started to heat up as on schedule, like he does every single season. And we're seeing some pretty good hockey out of Mika Zibanejad right now. So we're going to be diving deep into that today. But before we do, make sure you guys like, subscribe, ring that bell so you don't miss notification. Be sure to give us a 5-star review if you are watching on Apple or Spotify. And be sure to leave your comments on Mika Zibanejad down in the comment section below. And lastly, be sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms at Fireside Rangers on both Instagram and X. But all right, Mika Zibanejad. He is having a pretty incredible season so far. In his 29 games played across the entire year, he only has 9 goals, which is a little strange, but he's making up for it in assists. 17 assists for a total of 26 points. And looking at those numbers there, he's almost a point per game player, which is pretty incredible when you consider the slower start that he had to the season. Last year, I believe he was over a point per game. He was in the 90s. He finished just behind Artemi Panarin for second on the entire team. And you can only assume that he's going to put up similar numbers by the end of this season. And just seeing him produce those assists, it's pretty good right there. And, the goal scoring has been hit or miss recently. The one-timer from the circle hasn't been working as well as it has in the past, but you have to expect that Zibanejad is going to heat up. So once those goals start coming in and the assists keep coming in at the same rate, Zibanejad has the potential to make some pretty great strides and maybe hit a new career high in points as he did last season. Another thing that I do want to touch upon is of those 26 points that Zibanejad has scored, 14 of them have come on the power play. So I think that mainly comes from earlier on in the season when he was starting off kind of slow. The 5v5 was pretty poor, and most of those points were coming in on special teams. But now that he started to heat up a little bit at 5v5, his even strength points have started to go up. The power play points are still flowing in. So it's everything with Zibanejad is flying on all cylinders. He's been playing extremely, extremely well. But now let's talk about recently. He's on a 4-game point streak in which he has scored 6 total points. And outside of that, he has gotten a point in 12 of his last 13 games, 16 total points across that span. With the only game he hasn't scored in, well, not just scored a goal, scored a point, coming from the Rangers' shutout loss to the Washington Capitals. So no one scored that game. But other than that one game, Zibanejad has been perfect, going on a crazy point streak. Not as good as the one that Artemi Panarin was on earlier this season, but I think as of late in those last 13 games, Mika Zibanejad has been the best offensive producer on the New York Rangers, better than Panarin, better than Kreider, better than Trocheck. It's Zibanejad December at this point right now, and he's just been absolutely incredible. But I can't sit here and just talk about how many points he's been putting up the entire episode. We got to have a little bit of a discussion here and what this all means. Now, I think the main storyline that at least we've been covering here on Fireside Rangers so far this season has been that first line right wing. It's been a huge problem to start off the year. Kaapo Kakko was there on the first line playing with Kreider and Zibanejad. It didn't really work out. Blake Wheeler has had his time up there, and Wheeler has had some all right games. He's shown up in some big moments, but at the end of the day, he's not really a suitable long-term solution. Brodzinski had some time on the first line, and now we're already in the middle of December starting to cover who the Rangers could maybe trade for at the trade deadline. That's how big of a hole in the lineup it is at this point. But at this point right now, there's a lot of factors that you need to consider. And I think one of those factors is Mika Zibanejad and Chris Kreider included in the situation, where you look at the beginning of the season, Kaapo Kakko up on that first line. He tried his best. I'm one of the big Kakko defenders. I don't think he looked bad. He didn't look great, but he didn't look bad by any means. And I think he receives a lot of hate that isn't fully deserved. I know there is some criticism to be involved there, but he received a lot of hate that I think is a little too far. But in my opinion, how can you judge Kakko's performance on the first line when the other 2 players on that line were underperforming? Zibanejad, like I said earlier, started off the season extremely cold. Chris Kreider was a little hit or miss. He had some great games to start off the year, but then he kind of slowed down a little bit. He's had gone through his yearly cold stretch that he always goes on. But in my opinion, like Kaapo Kakko, obviously right now out long-term with injury, but Peter Laviolette did say that the injury is not season ending. So according to the head coach, we will see Kakko again. And in my opinion, when he does come back from injury, before we go out and spend a lot of money on another winger, I feel like the Rangers need to at least experiment with Kakko one more time on that first line when you have Chris Kreider and Mika Zibanejad in particular playing well. Because, yeah, was Kakko disappointing on the first line? Yes. But was he disappointing when the rest of the first line was cooking? No. It's like that entire line was not doing well whatsoever. And some could say that Kakko being taken off of the first line might have helped Zibanejad and Kreider start to heat up. Yeah, but at the same time, Wheeler hasn't been playing that well on the first line either. Brodzinski has had some all right games, but I think it would just be unfair to Kaapo Kakko to say you're not allowed to be on the first line and have a top six role without at least giving him that shot. Because in my opinion, you put a guy like Kakko with a player like Zibanejad, who is scoring almost at a point per game, he's over a point per game recently, 16 points in those last 13 games, just having gone only one game without scoring a point. That's when you can make the final assessment of who's going to be good on that first line. The same thing I feel like can't be said for Wheeler and Brodzinski because they have had the chance to play with Zibanejad while he's playing this hot, and they've just been average. You need to give Kakko that chance. And I don't mean to turn this into a whole nother Kakko redemption episode, but it's another one of those things that just one player playing as good as Zibanejad is could affect the entire lineup in such a way. That's just how different his game has been over this last stretch of games. And I feel like the same thing could also be said for any player that the Rangers might want to go out and trade for. I know we've thrown a lot of names out around here on the channel, like Sean Monahan, Frank Vetrano, Vladimir Tarasenko, a couple of familiar names there. We make the assessment where, let's just say Frank Vetrano, we've seen it in the past, him on the first line playing with Kreider and Zibanejad, and they meshed together extremely well. That was a very dominant first line. It helped the Rangers make it very far in the postseason that year. But that was because Frank Vetrano played so well with the Rangers, because Kreider and Zibanejad were also on top of their game playing very hot. So if you're looking at a potential trade, a lot of Rangers fans will say, oh, yes, let's go out here and reacquire Vetrano from Anaheim. We've seen it work before. It will work again now. And that's not necessarily true because who knows how Kreider and Zibanejad are going to be playing at that time. Look back last season at Patrick Kane. We saw the chemistry between Kane and Artemi Panarin work so well in Chicago. They spent a few seasons apart. They come back and all of a sudden it doesn't click. So to all the fans out there saying, oh, Vetrano, Tarasenko, it's a sure lock that it will work, you need to have that full line working as one cohesive unit. And it starts with Zibanejad. He's the one that wears the A. I guess Kreider does as well, but Zibanejad as a centerman, he is that leader on that first line. Not to take away from Chris Kreider and his leadership abilities, but I think if I had to choose one of the two as the leader of that line, I'm definitely leaning towards Zibanejad. He's more of an all-around dynamic player, plays better defensively as well. So you look at Kakko, a potential second chance at him, Vetrano, Tarasenko, anyone the Rangers could trade for. Their success, in my opinion, is entirely dependent on how well Mika Zibanejad is playing. And he does need to keep it up the entire year. As we know, as I've said a few times now, he started the year off slow and he is starting to heat up. And this is a trend that happens every single season where Zibanejad will start off ice cold. And then he'll start to slowly pick it up, and that'll snowball into March. Mika March, obviously, as the Rangers have coined it, where he'll just be scoring over a point per game for the remainder of the season. And we're getting close to that already at this point in December. So if it follows a similar trend where Zibanejad is going to stay this hot and will continue to snowball into him playing dominant hockey by the time the playoffs arrive, this team and the first line in particular could be something monumental. Zibanejad is, in my opinion, the absolute key to success. We know the second line is playing out of their minds. Even when Lafreniere is on a little bit of a point drought right now, Trocheck and Panarin are just that good. The bottom six providing incredible depth. Fourth line doing exactly what they're supposed to do. Third line plays great defense, good hard-hitting line, and they're able to hop on the score sheet every once in a while. But when you look at all four lines, the one line that I would critique the most has to be the first line. And as long as Zibanejad is playing like this, there hopefully shouldn't need to be much work done in order to perfect it. And speaking of Zibanejad and the first line, at the point of this recording, the Rangers are about 2 hours away from hitting the ice against the Toronto Maple Leafs. And you look at a game like that, just a little bit of a game preview since we aren't live streaming tonight, you need a guy like Zibanejad to step up his game. Toronto is a very depth-filled team in their offense. They have a lot of guys who can score a lot of goals. And I don't want to take away any credit from the Rangers defense and the goaltending. I'm pretty sure Shesterkin's back in net after an amazing performance against Boston. And they're going to play great. I know that they're going to play great. But at the end of the day, Toronto is just one of those teams that is that good that you could play almost perfect defense, almost perfect goaltending. But if you aren't 100% perfect, they're going to score a couple of goals on you, whether it be 1, 2, 3. You need your offense to score as well to counteract that. And we know the Rangers have been struggling a little bit. Like I said, shutout loss against Washington. That's a game that is inexcusable. You got to score against a team like Washington, whose defense and goaltending is not the greatest. Against Boston, another good team, but you only score 2 goals, one of them coming in overtime, the other coming in the second half of the third. The offense needs to really step up their game tonight. And I'm not sure when this video will be posted, probably around game time. So I'm sure you guys will watch this and go right into the game or watch it after the game. But so who knows, maybe I'm completely wrong and the offense will shut down again, or Toronto will get shut out or something. We'll see what happens. But Mika Zibanejad is the type of guy who needs to step up in particular tonight, because we know Panarin, he's going to play good. We know the bottom six is going to play good. Kreider might hop on the score sheet on the power play once, but Mika Zibanejad, if you're looking for an individual player who's going to have a game-changing performance, by the way he's been playing recently, I'm putting my fist down that he is the guy that is going to make that happen. But who knows? We'll see in 2 hours what happens. And I pray that I'm not wrong, because if I jinx the Rangers again, you guys will come at me in the comments and I will never hear the end of it, which I was right about the Anaheim one. I didn't jinx that one. But that about wraps up this episode. Discussion about Mika Zibanejad, the offensive tear that he's been on across the last 13 or so games. But thank you to everyone for watching. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, ring that bell so you don't miss notification. If you're watching us on Apple or Spotify, be sure to give us a 5-star review. Leave your thoughts down in the comment section below on Mika Zibanejad and tonight's game against Toronto, whether you watched it before or after. What are your predictions, thoughts about the outcome, and all that? And lastly, be sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms at Fireside Rangers on both Instagram and X, because we do have daily updates and game updates as the game goes on every single day. So once again, thank you all for watching. Have a good one, and let's go Rangers.